this is how we imagined Polish people for a very long time. So basically, my first impression of Polish people was they drive Polonaise with their legs stretched out of the windows and drink a lot of vodka. Then, when the borders opened, we traveled to Targi, to Poland, to buy cheap stuff. Uh, and most Czech people would probably say that Polish people are selling cheap stuff, and that's the only thing they know about them. And also, young people probably don't remember, but I bought shitloads of cassettes in Poland because they were costing like $1 because there were no copyrights in Poland for, I don't know, until late 90s, I guess, was it? I think. So práva producenta oraz práva autorskie zastrzeżone nikým. No one. Yeah, so I have shitloads of those. This is actual picture of my cassettes. So basically, this is a nice Czech advertisement from like 5 years ago, and that shows how majority of Czech people actually depicts Polish people, which is it's offensive. And I would need a sound, so I hope it's gonna work. No, it doesn't have a sound. Can we have a sound from the computer projector or anything? It's. But wait a minute.
Šlápněm do toho! Sklus! Jedem! Jedem! Běžte, já vás doženu. Látka. Zatracený krám.
Witajcie w kramu uniwersalnym. Co pan szuka? Wszystko mamy. Kot packowy, fazole jantarowe, lizaki malinowe.
Lizáky, ale
Telefon komórkowy amerykański.
já nemám
Bo nie ma pieniądze. Nie wadzi. Wymieniamy.
vyměňány. Tak super. Hele,
So that's the general image of Polish people in Czech Republic lately. But there was a lot. I grew up in next to Polish border, so I speak a little bit of Polish and I understand pretty well. Because Polish TV was much better than ours during communism, so I could watch Bolek i Lolek, of course, but also Gwiezdne Wojny, voice-overed by Lektor, which is infamous Polish thing, and we are used to it. So that's the first time I saw Gwiezdne Wojny was in Polish TV, as well as many other science fiction movies, American science fiction movies. So basically, it was quite important cultural enrichment for me to watch Polish TV. But it wasn't just Gwiezdne Wojny, it was Hity Satelity, where we heard the coolest, latest shit from the West, and also Psebuje dvojky. And that's where our both ways cultural enrichment starts, because this is Czech group Turbo on Polish TV's Psebuje dvojky. They are really special. And this is, I understand this is kind of Polish AC/DC, and it's actually, and I'm not kidding. It's actually one of the first vinyl records I played on my gramophone. So I don't think it was this record. It was white, and I couldn't find the proper record. But this is one of the first bands I played on my stereo at home. And also, I was buying on those gray markets Polish comic books because there were no comic books in our country, and surprisingly some of them were released in Poland sooner than in our country. So I was reading Polish translated comic books as a kid. This one especially, I like it. I like the cover, I don't know why, and it's actually pretty good even in the inside. And also this. This movie is actually pretty famous in our country, at least amongst the old people like me. I also remember this one, and that leads to this lady that was quite famous as well. That was like we had such actress as well, and she was also very famous. This movie actually inspired our game, or I used this movie as a quite a big reference to our game. It has a lot of cool stuff, and it's pretty good, I would say. So it was a like big help for us. And also, I grew up watching these guys, where we get to another Czech reference, because we in our country made this into future. So we have 4 stanku IPS in space, and I'm no kidding.
Pomóż, pomóż. Polak w niebezpieczeństwie. Polak wola pomóż, pomóż. Pomóż, pomóż. Polak w niebezpieczeństwie. Polak wola pomóż, pomóż, pomóż.
Polak w niebezpieczeństwie? Tu pan Wołodyjowski, słyszymy cię. Co się stało?
Jestem Niemcem na pokładzie Pepiko. Grożą mi śmierci.
Mało prawdopodobne. To Czesi. Oni potrafią tylko paplać.
Nie, nie, poważnie. Zamierzają wyrzucić mnie ze statku w kosmos.
Te piki? Naprawdę? Chłopaki! Czesi chcą wyrzucić naszego z pokładu.
Czy jesteście tam w 4 ze psem?
Aha. My Polacy inaczej nie podróżujemy.
Czy w takim razie mnie uratujecie?
Oczywiście.
Czyli przylecicie po mnie, prawda?
Nie. Wyskocz ze statku i poczekaj na nas. Zabierzemy cię w drodze powrotnej.
Ale,
Masz hak.
ale to niemożliwe. To zbyt niebezpieczne.
Polak zawsze da radę.
So this is surprisingly, when I went firstly to Poland, there was Schweik restaurant everywhere, much more than in our country. So, and these guys on the right are Polish, so I was quite surprised how famous it is here. It's my favorite book, but I guess young people don't know it anymore. And then comes much more newer stuff. So basically, this is one of my favorite movies. I accidentally saw it, and I think it's really good. And surprisingly, all the CGI effects were done in Prague by people I know. So cultural enrichment both ways as well. And this is like, I understand that Czech movies are quite famous here. Nie wiadomo o co chodzi w nich. This is and there is a song, hip-hop song, Polish hip-hop song about it. So this guy is some Polish ciemna trefa or something. And he is doing high five with Krzecik in the video. I don't know why. And then these guys told me that there is a movie, Truhla plná zlata, which is a famous Czech movie that was very popular here, but no one knows that movie in Czech Republic. Like literally, there is no mention about it on the internet. So it's something that probably, as some movies go straight to DVD, this movie went straight to Poland, probably. I don't know. I also listen to a lot of Polish music. And the guy in the middle is a fan of a very famous Czech black metal band, so another cultural enrichment. I also know this guy. His song Tvoja córka is pretty popular at our parties. And I also... my friends play songs of this guy at all the parties, and he's really insane. And also, like, this is on the serious note. The book in front of this guy was really big inspiration for us when we made the game, and it's surprisingly one of the best books about the period, about Hussite wars, written in last 50 years, I would say. So it's really interesting that the Polish guy wrote the best novel about Czech history. That's quite interesting. But we also have some wars between us. In 1918, we kicked your ass in Český Těšín. In 1938, you fought back. And in the 48, we took it back away. But then in 50s, we kind of solved it. So the beer is quite popular, but I was surprised that everybody when I asked, what do you know about Czech culture, people usually tell me knedlíčky. I don't know why. But to games. So recently there was a couple of Polish games and a couple of Czech games that were quite successful. And everybody asking me, do you think that it is a trend that there will be new games coming out, that we will conquer the video game industry? And I actually think a little bit that it's a little bit of a bubble. And I'm one of the guys responsible for the bubble because I realized very interesting thing that as Churchill once said that in different context, but that very few people are actually responsible for the culture, especially in small countries like ours. And I would like to illustrate it on a couple of examples. So I took, recently I looked at 117 best Czech movies made since 1918. And surprisingly, 55% of them were directed by just 13 people, which is not much. It's like one guy in 10 years. 79% were directed only by 28 directors. So generally, 3/4 of the best Czech movies were done by less than 30 people, which is quite interesting, and it means that without those people, and there is not many of them, there will be no Czech movie industry, basically. And the similar thing can be applied to games. And interestingly, Czech movies were doing quite good 10 years ago, but recently, thanks to, I don't know, film schools getting shitty or something, no Czech movie since 2015 got higher rating than 80%. So they are all shit generally, and they really are mostly. So basically, these are just the list of the guys that were the most successful, and you can see that this guy on the picture, he's responsible for the 13 best Czech movies. Only the one guy is responsible for a huge amount of our cultural heritage, I would say. He didn't make enough movies. These are just the first 8 or 10 people. He made like 2 that are over 80% in our Czech database. But surprisingly, it's mostly old people. It's mostly from communism. So generally, when I look at it, before World War II, we made 1.4 good movies per year. And that includes World War, when the movie production was very, very small. During communism, there were 3 great movies a year. And right now, we have less than 1, which is kind of sad. And it applies a little bit to games as well, as I will show you lately. So basically, this is just a structure, and you can see that the post-communist era is the worst, probably, in kind of a cultural production. So our culture depends on very few individuals, generally. Now I switch to Czech video games. I don't know how much you know about it, but the good thing is that we invented Tetris 2 on ZX Spectrum. In the 80s, Czech video game in Czech video games, not industry, was mostly ZX Spectrum and Atari, mostly ZX Spectrum, I would say, and some shitty Czech computers. And again, most games produced at the time were developed by just a bunch of free guys who mostly did text adventures. And adventures generally, adventure games in general, were very popular in Czech Republic up until 2000 something. So when everybody was making virtual reality, first-person shooters, and big epic games, there were Czech companies producing classic point-and-click adventures still. We also produce some sex games, very hot. And this is typical Czech game from the 80s. It's about the guy who is trying to find the promised beer land where beer flows in the rivers or something. And it's like, and that like briefly go through the good games that were released since 90s. I said it's gonna be raining, and it is. So basically, as I said, it started with adventure games, and you can see at the bottom that at the same time, the Western video game industry was totally different and much more further. So, and those games were usually quite shitty, as you can see from the pictures. And there was kind of specialty that people were making parodies out of parodies, which is kind of like really bizarre. In 1999, that's when I joined. Warhorse released Hidden Dangers, which was probably the first Czech big game released in the West. I participated a little bit on it, but then again, text adventures only. This is Hidden Dangers. I did the facial textures on the guys, I think. And it was one of the, basically it started a new genre. It was the first tactical strategy game from first-person perspective. Then it was Operation Flashpoint. My colleague Martin Klima, from which I have a company, released quite original turn-based strategy, Original War. And I also was part of the Flying Heroes, which was a ridiculous idea about Quake Arena with magic carpets, and it didn't sell as you can expect. Then I worked on Mafia, and surprisingly, Czech Republic is a center of truck simulators. So there is a company who releases a truck simulator every fucking year, and they are super successful. And then another adventures. And then Hidden Dangers 2, Viet Cong, which is all from the company I worked for, Illusion Softworks, UFO Aftermath, and other truck games and other adventures. And then decline started. Everybody was starting making games because they saw all the success, but they didn't have the people, the designers or creators that were able to do it. So they were technically able to do it, which is the same risk we are facing today, I would say. So the creator, the guy who has the idea, is able to communicate it and kind of force other people to do what he wants, is very important. And all those games that I read were commercial failures. Chameleon is one of the games I kind of participated a little bit. It was released by the company I worked for at the time. It was gorgeous. Visuals are still, it's the upper picture. The visuals are still great, but it was shit. There was no design. We tried to fix it somehow, but the guys didn't have proper designer, and the game was simply kind of bad, and it was released as a budget game immediately. And there was a lot of other games that were like that at the time, because a lot of companies started to kind of jump on the hype train and didn't have the knowledge or talent to do it. Wings of War is another game I participated. It's a quite interesting story where it was supposed to be kind of a Red Baron hardcore simulator, but then GTA was released, and some producers got the idea to make it Red Baron / GTA. So, for example, there were missions where you have to change planes, so you can bomb something, land, and then to have a fighter. And the guy decided that you will jump from plane to plane. The result was that it was shit, not visually, not technically, but game design-wise, and nobody liked it. Not the hardcore guys, and of course not the GTA guys, because the GTA guys don't fucking care about simulators. And then Viet Cong 2 was released. Viet Cong was a big success, I would say. Viet Cong 2 was shipped too early. It was kind of like hurry, and it failed. And there was another company who released a game called Cold War. Again, kind of interesting game, but released like not good design. Technically, it was good. So then Arma was released. It's another famous Czech game. Machinarium, which is very famous Czech adventure. Mafia 2, and we started to do mobile games. Shadowgun is one of the biggest mobile first-person games, and other failures. Bohemia Interactive, who made Arma and Operation Flashpoint, tried to do other games, and they failed. They didn't have designers, so they basically every other game than Arma was a failure that they released, except of course DayZ that they released, but it was idea of a guy from New Zealand who just came to them and made a mod and give it to them. And then we are in a present where, except KCD, there are some other smaller indie games like Factorio, who is doing pretty good. And then American, and of course Mafia 3, and of course truck simulators who are ruling the country. Every single year they release something. So basically the biggest problems of Czech games is 90% of them are rip-offs of some other games that were released earlier and that are better, which is not the way to go. Today also it's kind of everybody's cloning everything, that I said Clone Wars, because you see a mobile app and you try to do something similar, and people just don't do what they want, they do what they think someone else wants. And usually it's not working. It's interesting comparison between Czech, Poland, and Sweden, because like Czech Republic is 10 million people, Sweden is 9 million people, Poland is 34 or something like that, 38. So we are almost 4 times bigger than us. But generally, these are the games that I think are the most successful from each country. And you can see that Czech Republic is the smallest, but it's not 4 times smaller than Poland. And Sweden, which is smaller than both of us, is actually doing much better. But on the other hand, a lot of the games made in Sweden are just franchises developed there by Ubisoft or EA, so they are not actually Swedish games. I would say, as you can see in the previous videos, Polish people are much better businessmen than we are. But then we get to the thing, what is actually a Polish or Czech game? And is it even important to kind of have something that could be said is typically Polish? Is there something like something typical, and should there be? A lot of people say that there shouldn't, that we are all the same. I would say we are not, and I would say that this kind of weird thinking can lead to much more boring and monotonous world. So I think that the differences are quite important. Because then Chinese people start building medieval castles in China, which they actually do. They built 6 of them already, and I don't think it's the way to go. So diversity is important, and diversity in its true meaning that things are different, and you can choose from different things, and you can choose what you like, and you have an option or choice what you can play, what you can do. I would say that without diversity there is no challenge, so different ideas can compete, and without challenge there is no progress. And so basically difference means somehow a progress. So I would say that it's quite important to stay unique and different than the others, and it's the way to go for us. So as I said, diversity is when things are different and not forcibly mixed together. Another comparison about our countries, Polish video game industry is quite large. You have like, the number is probably wrong, you have like probably 5,000 developers and 331 companies, and quite more gamers than we do. On the contrary, Czech companies, we have only 44 gaming companies in Czech Republic, which is much smaller. But surprisingly, we don't have that few developers. We have like more than 1,000 developers, and we release 30 games a year, which is not 4 times less than Poland releases actually. This is a turnover of the game. So Poland is almost 500 million, Czech Republic is 150. Again, it's not 4 times smaller, so per capita we are doing quite good, but and even Sweden is worse than Poland, which is interesting with all their games. Uh, we also don't have any government support yet. So Polish industry has much bigger government support. We don't in Czech Republic. I hate government support. I think that lower taxes are the best thing, but generally, when everybody has it, you have to have it too. Uh, I would say generally that the most important thing for our industries is the ideas. People who have ideas, and there's very limited amount of such people, so we can kind of treat them well and value them well. I would say that also we kind of know how it was to be forced to do something during communism. I also know how it was to be forced to do something by a big corporation for which I worked. So it was also impossible to do what I want because the big corporation forced me to do it. So I would say that we are kind of sensible to attacks on our choice, artistic choices. I am at least. So it's also very important. And the question is if anyone is interested about typical Czech or Polish games. And I would definitely say they are. If you look at our cultures, were actually split from the West. Nobody knew our culture. And when everybody asks me if I was afraid that people will not get the historical aspect of Kingdom Come and Czech history and stuff, I always told them that nobody knew about Scottish history before Mel Gibson made a movie about it. And now everybody knows William Wallace. And the same is with our culture. So when people were afraid that Kingdom Come is not going to be successful because it plays in Bohemia, and when we release it, everybody started to be interested in Bohemia, and nobody ever complained that it's not in England or somewhere else. So I would say that the difference is kind of an advantage. So it's good to be different, and it's good to be true to yourself. The good example are Italians. They are very down to earth, traditional, and they are very. Democrats and the other party in America is Republicans, and they are not traditional. Conservative, yeah. They are very conservative. They don't eat anything except pizza and pasta. They force everyone else to eat pizza and pasta. They do what they did 100 years ago, and they are insisting to do it again. And they kind of force the world to like them. I would say that I don't think that pasta is that special, but Italians insisted that it is, and everybody started eating it. So we can do the same, I would say. So basically, ignore what everyone says and do what you want. And I would say just to stick to who you are, where you were born, and what you were how you grew up. It's kind of a good way because when you look at other games developed, the most successful games developed here, it's Daisy, which is based in a post-communist country. It's Kingdom Come, which is in Czech country. It's Witcher, which is basically Polish history / fantasy, but it's a lot of Polish myths and stuff in it. So those games are the most successful ones, and they are kind of typical Polish or Czech. They are really traditional, I would say. The problem of video games, as I said before, is that currently, and I see it as a quite sad thing about video game industry, movies are created by artists. Story is the king, so producer chooses a screenwriter and a director, and they make a movie. And they have a lot of artistic freedom. And even in Hollywood, where this is kind of normal. In games, usually it's different. Games are designed by committees, they are designed by boards of managers. Designers are just a bunch of people that are fulfilling the task to write some story in between the gameplay that someone else invented. And even quite great games are developed this way. And when I speak to a lot of writers on famous franchises, they kind of envious that I can do it differently. Because in our company, the designers are the guys who are the writers and who are setting what the game is going to be. And I think that is very important. So let's say that you should kind of, and when we started, everybody told me that I should do some Facebook game or I should do something that someone else is doing. And I would say that you should ignore that. You should ignore the barriers that you think that they are because they may not even be there. You should do firstly try to do what you want to do. If you find some impossible barriers, you should try to find a way how to overcome them, and then very often you may realize that it's actually possible to do stuff. And I would say that Kingdom Come is perfect example of something that was looking to be impossible to do and in the end turned out to be successful. And I would say, for example, Witcher is also this case. The game was very hard to develop. I guess that there was a lot of troubles to do it, and in the end it's one of the most successful games in the world. So you don't have to copy, and I don't want to sound like some do-it-yourself book writer, but the general message of my speech is that it's great that games are different than movies, because movies are usually sold by the actors and by the setting, and so nobody's watching other movies than Americans, because they are used to the American environment and American actors. In games, this is not the case. While Polish movie may have it really, really hard to succeed abroad, Polish game has the same chance as any other game to succeed. It's only important if it's good. And that's the great thing about games, that we are still not dependent on the actors' faces, which is really, really, really good thing. I would say generally the last kind of advice is that rip-offs will not make you rich. I really do think that being innovative is the way to get rich, if you want to get rich. Being yourself actually does make you rich if you are good and smart. It's important to make games about us and for us. It's the best way to do something good, because you are the person that you know best, and if you do something that you're gonna like, it's very likely that there are other people like you who will like it as well. I would say that it's kind of really bad when everybody is doing games about something else that they doesn't know. So everybody's making games set in America, about Americans, with American names, with American tradition. I would say that it's good way to do a game set in Warsaw. And you can do first-person shooter set almost anywhere. And as I said, I don't think that anyone would care. There is a Call of Duty sequel that took place in Prague, and nobody complained. So to make the game distinguishable from the others is quite important. And I would say that you don't have to be ashamed about your culture, because again, we had to make the decision if we change the Czech names to English or German names in our game, because they are quite hard to pronounce, and we chose to stick with Czech names, and nobody complained anyway. So again, think that we thought it's going to be a problem, and it wasn't a problem at all. So I would say that the difference makes us more attractive, and it's the way to go. You can see that there are other games like Stalker and Metro that are most successful Eastern European games, and they are Eastern European. They are not trying to be American, which is a good. So I would say we can do it. I would like to see more unique games made in this region, and that's it. And thank you very much.